Hello and welcome to AM Prime here on WESN Content Capital. My name is Keaton Shaw. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. A beautiful day here in Trinidad. If we were fortunate enough last night, we had a brief but wonderful burst of rain from the heavens above. This morning, it's bright, it's sunny, and possibly Saharan dust. No, definitely Saharan dust. So if you're feeling your sinuses itching this morning, not to worry. You'll get some relief shortly, hopefully. But of course, just be careful out there, whatever you do. Anyway, as we start this morning's edition of the program, let's get straight into some regional updates, some that have withheld over the last couple of days, but still very much relevant as to what's taking place across the islands. We start with Antigua and Barbuda, where the Director of Agriculture, Gregory Bailey, has welcomed a pilot initiative led by the Department of Environment to improve farmers' access to sustainable irrigation. Let's take a look at this report from Antigua and Barbuda.
A farm in Lightfoot is now one of two provided with a small solar-powered reverse osmosis plant. The initiative was spearheaded by the Department of Environment and its partners. It's being welcomed by Director of Agriculture, Gregory Bailey.
Good initiative. We need integrated approaches to water management and water supply for agriculture. So having mobile systems can form a part of that integrated effort.
The aim of such initiatives is to increase production and food security, reduce food imports, and save foreign exchange. I asked the Director of Agriculture about progress being made by Antigua and Barbuda in contributing to the CARICOM target of reducing food imports by 25% by the year 2025.
Well, Antigua is definitely on track in terms of playing its part. And as you rightly said, it's a regional initiative. So based on our own context, we may not reach the goal of reducing our imports by 25%. However, our contribution to the regional overall 25% is assured.
While increasing food production for domestic consumption is a crucial effort, the country is also seeking to capitalize on any opportunities in the export market as well. Bailey explains the crops that present the greatest potential in this area.
Off the bat, crops such as onion, the root crops generally speaking. Antigua is particularly poised within the OECS to dominate that type of production where root crops are concerned. We have flatlands, well-draining lands, and also lands that lend themselves to amelioration, meaning that you can adjust them very easily to suit a particular crop. In addition to that, a lot of the root crops, once they start to bulb, they require less water than the traditional above-ground crops. So that is where we have a competitive advantage.
In terms of exports?
In terms of export, yes. But as I said, the key thing is having the economies of scale, having the right size in terms of farm units to make them feasible.
Cabinet has indicated it wants to put measures in place to improve production of the Antigua black pineapple. Bailey provides an update.
Yeah, well, we have the advantage of having the name. So the name is already established. It's for us to get our act together on the ground. And I know the Honorable Minister has been putting in a lot of energy to determine the way forward where agriculture is concerned. Again, the issues of economies of scale come to the forefront, especially with pineapple crop, which is more or less somewhat of a medium-term to long-term crop. I don't know if most people realize that in order for you to get a crop of pineapple, it takes 14 months. So if you're going to invest in a crop for 14 months, absorb all the risks, then you cannot be planting on a quarter acre, 1 acre, or even a 5 acre plot. So the economies of scale again, and the ability of government to be able to allocate such lands for that type of production.
Well, improving crop production in Antigua, not only to actually supply its local economy, but by extension, the rest of the Caribbean is going to take a lot of factors, one of which the Antiguan government has realized is proper irrigation system. Now, crucially, given the climate and, of course, global warming, proper water and proper irrigation systems have become absolutely necessary for highly productive farming. Thing is, Antigua is taking a step in the right direction. It's whether or not they go fully ahead with it, because I can't speak to the context as to the development of the agricultural sector there, but certainly with reports like these, you think, okay, great, well done. What's next? Furthermore, it's possibly a lesson for the rest of Caribbean islands to take a look at. I know Guyana really have focused a lot on agriculture over the last few years, so their development is a bit greater than where we are. But where is their opportunity? Food processing, food packaging. So if there are other islands focusing on that, perhaps TNT needs to look at opportunity as well. Anyway, moving forward now to the island of St. Lucia. Well, St. Lucia Carnival, it's not all about Bacchanal this Vaval season, as the island gears up for Lucian Carnival 2023. Stakeholders are confident that the economic benefits will turn the most anti-carnival naysayers into true believers. Let's take a look at this report.
People historically have seen Carnival as Bacchanal, people on the streets drinking, eating, dancing, and they estimate the contribution it makes. In last year, the month with the highest number of arrivals to this country was July, and just because of Carnival. The month when we had the greatest economic activity was July, which was Carnival.
The gains from the festival, dispersed throughout many pockets of society, is one of the messages from avid carnival impresarios and policymakers. Culture Minister Dr. Ernest Hilaire says that apart from the monetary returns, every stakeholder must strive to keep the cultural art forms alive. However, he concedes the economic benefits are undeniable.
There is the artistry, the cultural significance of Carnival, but there's also the economic significance of Carnival. And many times when people criticize Carnival, we really need to make a case for Carnival as an economic activity in the country. The amount of money that is generated in this country. Thaddeus made the point, 10,000 visitors came to this country, and on their ED cards stated they were coming for Carnival, 10,000. So for us, we have to constantly make the case for Carnival, for have greater investment in Carnival, and for us to see the multiplicity of, economic activities that are created is quite significant.
And the simple multiplier effect.
The
Do
multiplier
you care
effect.
to, as you end, to say the budget for Carnival has still been worked on? Will you care to
No,
say?
I don't want to get figures because tomorrow might get a little anxious.
Still being worked on.
But it's been worked on.
Significant
But government
contribution.
is committed to a heavy investment in Carnival.
Profits aside, there are bragging rights for competitive carnival bands, musicians, and creatives. National Steel Pan Association President Pauline Mathre says the Panorama competition will feature 6 big bands ready to duke it out to become the 2023 Panorama champions.
St. Lucie from Miku will be joining the 5 we had from last year.
Okay.
So we have Labri Steel Pan, then we have Miku, St. Lucie's. We have Canbeats, SM Steel from Canry Soufre. We have Fantastic Music. We have Lucilec Pan Time Steel Orchestra, and then we have the Quartz Babulo, the reigning champs from last year.
Apart from Panorama, good night, Babono.
Organizers expect the summer event to provide tangible and enduring benefits to thousands of St. Lucians, and not only the merriment of the ardent reveler in the street.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we pause on your regional updates for now. We take a quick break here on AM Prime and routine. We welcome our first guest this morning. Stay tuned to the program. What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers? Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw,
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers.
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
Only on WESN.
the content capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law. and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Welcome back to AM Prime. Thank you for staying with me this morning. We had a very interesting conversation with the Chief Executive Officer of the Environmental Research Institute of Charlottesville. That's Eric, Mr. Aljosha Watka. We're speaking about the Charlottesville Oyster Growing Project. It's part of marine conservation here in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, Mr. Watka is with us via Zoom. Good morning, sir.
To Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, thank you very much for joining me. Why Charlottesville? Why oysters?
Well, the first answer why Charlottesville is simple. The Environmental Research Institute Charlottesville is located in Charlottesville. We are working within the Northeast Tobago UNESCO Man and the Biosphere Reserve, so it was just a logical location because of we have our offices there, as well as we enjoy quite unpolluted waters high up in the Northeast Tobago. Why oysters? Well, we were looking for blue economic activities, especially in the fishery sector, that allow fisher folk to adapt to the challenges that they are facing. The challenges are climate change. The challenges are declining fish stocks, greater fishing efforts, higher prices for fuel and boat repairs. So what can we do to make this extremely important fishing economic sector for Northeast Tobago viable and make it resilient against the shocks that come from inside through pollution, for example, of waterways, as well as from global threats that we are facing, like climate change, like overfishing, and declining fish stocks and smaller fish sizes.
Mm-hmm. Well, oysters are often deemed to be, it depends on where you go to get them. You can get them on the streets here in Trinidad and Tobago, you can get them in restaurants as a delicacy. But is there a market for these oysters, especially the ones that are being farmed, if I'm not mistaken, the eastern oyster here in Trinidad and Tobago? Or is this something for the wider Caribbean?
The oysters that we're having are different to those that are grown in Trinidad, that are normally found in mangrove swamps. We are importing the oysters from Louisiana, and they are triploid oysters. That means they cannot reproduce. So the quality of the oysters is very excellent. They grow larger, and the taste is very excellent. We are extremely surprised about the very positive response, the media outreach that we had in the last 2-3 months. We can definitely say that the oysters that we have for our pilot project, and it's important to note that this was a pilot project to establish whether this can work. The oysters that we have right now are already more than oversubscribed. So in order to satisfy the demand that we just got in the last, or registered in the last 2 months, we are now looking to expand the farms and bring in more fishermen to increase production.
How was this project conceptualized in terms of, one, having to bring experts together? Does Trinidad and Tobago have the experts in order to make this project what it is now? And two, in terms of investment, where was funding sought for this particular thing? Is it purely a private business, private venture?
Absolutely not. It is, so the Environmental Research Institute Charlottesville is a non-for-profit organization. We are working on conservation related issues, sustainable development, blue economy, green economy as well, and improving livelihoods for the communities in Northeast Tobago. The project got funded by BP Trinidad and Tobago. We were extremely grateful to receive the funding, as well as with from a funder that was willing to take the risk, because we did not know whether it can work or not. Nobody has done this before, and in the same environment. And yeah, we're quite lucky that everything worked out. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you've also mentioned climate resilience and environmentally sustainable alternative income sources as part of blue economic activity. Could we expand on that for a bit, especially in terms of environmentally sustainable and climate resilience?
Well, the fisheries sector in Trinidad and Tobago and throughout the Caribbean is increasingly threatened by the effects of climate change, whether this is changing seawater temperature, which affects the plankton, which affects the fish that grow, the migratory paths of fish. We all know about the sargassum influx that is linked to climate change. We know that the fish stock is completely overstretched and is declining. Mm-hmm. Fishing as a blue economic activity is getting more and more complicated, and fishermen are threatened in their economic activity. It might not, and we can see this as well as by the rising prices that we pay for fish. So we had to find a way, how can fishermen use marine resources and at the same time create valuable income. Oysters are quite valuable resource. The farms are extremely environmentally friendly. There are no byproducts, negative byproducts. There is no waste. We don't have to feed them. They just feed on their own. And we are marine, when we are biologists, marine biologists, and we have consulted with experts from the US as well, from Britain, that are on our team and assist us with the pre-evaluation and are continuously helping us out to find better ways. We are now trying to find ways how we can make it economically even more viable to produce fishermen and reduce the investment that has to be done at the beginning, because our investment was quite high at the beginning. We're now trying to find ways how we can establish oyster farms with local material, so we don't have to import the material for the farm. We will have to continue importing the oysters, though.
Mm-hmm. I think everything that you suggested already says that it would not affect the existing ecosystems, so that's good news. But just to get an idea of this entire process, you said you have to import the oysters. So you import them as of course we would assume babies, and then you would have to raise them on the farm. But precisely what does it take to build an oyster farm, and what is the process in terms of importing and then actually raising oysters before they're able to be sold on the market?
So what we have done, we have, based on our expert advice, we have used a commercial equipment to raise the oysters. These are oyster cages. In these cases, cages are bags. These bags are anchored on the seafloor, but float on the surface of the ocean. And the oysters, we had to actually bring them in personally. We had to fly to Miami and get them into Trinidad, because the baby oysters, the oyster seeds as they are called, cannot stay long out of the water. So everything has to be done within 72 hours. And this is logistically extremely challenging to manage this. Afterwards, the oysters are acclimatized to our water conditions, and then they are regularly checked. It's like a farm, so you have to go every day, or not every day, every 3 or 4 days, and check the oysters, make sure that there's not too much growth on the cages, make sure there are no predators, take out any dead ones, and yeah. take care for them like you have to take care for cattle or goats or your plants. And then it takes about 9 to 10, let's say 10 to 11 months until they come from the point of arrival to harvest.
Precisely how many oysters were used in starting this farm, and when will they be ready? At what point do you have an idea will they be ready for harvesting?
Well, we are looking forward in the next month. So by mid-June, we should have the first harvest. Currently, we have about 3,500 oysters that are there and have grown remarkably. We have almost 1 centimeter growth per month. And then we start to reseed those oysters with new imports that we bring in late May, beginning of June again.
Oh, excellent. But you've also already hinted at expanding because the response has been far more incredible than initially anticipated. So therefore, I'm assuming the next step following the first harvest is investing more in this oyster farm. Could we see, not to jump the gun too much, but could we also see the expansion beyond just Charlottesville?
And we hope forward to this. This is the step 3, more or less. The next step is really that we create a little cluster around Charlottesville, simply because it reduces the workload if farmers are working together and support each other. And secondly, with the hope to create a unique culinary experience in Charlottesville with the oysters, something like what sharks are for Maracas or bacon shad is for Maracas. We would like to establish something like this, like oysters and lionfish for Charlottesville, for example. So we are quite proud having this there. We would like to expand it in the future, depending on demand and possible export to the entire biosphere reserve. But we are quite keen on branding these oysters as a culinary delicacy from the Northeast Tobago UNESCO Man in the Biosphere Reserve.
Charlottesville's very own, doing your part to expand on blue economic activity. Mr. Watka, thank you very much for joining me this morning. It's certainly a pleasure.
Okay, I thank you. Greetings. All the best.
All the best, and do have a good day. Keep well.
Bye-bye.
That's a very, very interesting project that's taking place there. It certainly has the support and keeping an eye on this because I thought it's rather interesting that we are focusing on the blue economy. Certainly something that we could expand on for years now, that's been suggested, but particularly an oyster farm, well, that project is taking place, and pretty exciting news. So within a month, it should be the first harvest, but expansion certainly, and Charlottesville's very own. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break here on AM Prime. When we return, welcome our next guest for this morning's edition of the program. Stay tuned.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andre.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinidad
Tobagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
North Coast Jazz 2023 takes place in just about 2.5 weeks' time, and here on AM Prime we are fortunate enough to partner with North Coast Jazz and to welcome its performers to the program to get insight as to their role in North Coast Jazz and precisely why they're performing and what we can look forward to. Well, this morning I am very fortunate to welcome to the program Mr. Mungal Pattisar. Yes, you've heard his name before. He's the founder and lead of Mungal Pattisar and Panther. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. It certainly is a privilege. As I was saying earlier, I grew up listening to Mungal Pattisar. His iconic tune, Dreadlock, is always stuck in my head. But now I'm actually very lucky, I guess, to ask you precisely that song in particular, Dreadlock. How did you even come up with a name for that particular tune?
Well, it's a kind of, I'll make it short. We were sound checking at the pool at the Hilton. In those days, Hyatt was not there yet. And near the pool, this guy was swimming. And then when he came out of the water and shook his hair, the evening sun, it was around 6 in the evening or later, and the rays and the water created such a color that immediately that song just came to mind, and the whole song unfolded within a matter of 3 minutes.
Wow. Well, I would have never guessed that, but taking inspiration from one of the perhaps simplest things, something that happens every day. That's rather interesting. But now let's get on to North Coast Jazz 2023. You will be performing, but why is Mungal Pattisar going to North Coast Jazz? Why are you going on the stage to perform at this concert?
The thing about it, we have appeared in jazz festivals worldwide, and it is one of our favorite venues for performing. We have performed all over Europe, every major jazz festival, even in rock festivals. So North Coast Jazz is just another one. We've gone to Tobago, St. Lucia, Suriname, all the jazz festivals. So North Coast Jazz is just another one of those. And to me, quite prestigious in Trinidad and Tobago. So it's our privilege to join them.
Well, from what I understand, this is also your first appearance as part of the setup at North Coast Jazz. Is that correct?
Yes, that's a fact, yes. Apparently, the organizers didn't know about us yet.
I'll have to correct that. Now they know about you for sure. But this is the thing, Mr. Patchester. Some people might be wondering. I know you just mentioned that you've been to jazz concerts throughout the world, and even rock concerts, which is quite amazing. But the sitar, people are probably thinking, listen, how could the sitar, a classical Indian music instrument, could be performed at jazz concerts? What are your thoughts on how do we answer that question?
The thing about that has a history in it, and I don't think that your program will allow for a long history. But let's suffice it to say that when I came back after studying sitar, Indian classical music, which I studied, I got a master's degree in English, Indian classical music, was not really accepted in Trinidad and Tobago. So immediately I had to create a music that will become palatable to the world. My target was world class. And so I started creating music. In fact, most of the 90% of the music that we played were all composed and created by me. And that music has been so well accepted all over Europe that the jazz festivals, and they invited us naturally just when they heard our music. Mm-hmm. So that's how it was termed as jazz. And then I remember at the end of 2000, the Vogue magazine had it as the music of the new millennium. In other words, it was accepted at the highest quarters as a new form of music.
Mm-hmm. Do you see, you mentioned the term palatable. Do you think that the sitar is now widely more accepted here in Trinidad and Tobago? Or do you think a lot more needs to be done in perhaps expanding opportunities for younger people to learn about the sitar and learn to play the sitar?
Well, the thing is that I had classes running for over 30 years. And people come and they learn for a week or two and then give up, because the sitar, it's not an easy instrument to play. It is very painful at the beginning because it hurts your finger. It's worse than a guitar in the sense that you've got to pull the strings to make the notes. My daughter happened to become a sitar player because she has belly, she has guts, and she has been playing since she was a baby. In fact, my two daughters have been playing sitar, and they become sitar players only because of that. They are with me all the time. But other people who came, which was amounting to over 200 people came to learn sitar, and unfortunately, I just lost them after one or two lessons.
Mm. And that's rather sad. But here in Trinidad and Tobago, our diversity, our culture, we as a people, we're so blessed and fortunate. Is that something that North Coast Jazz 2023 is championing by bringing these diverse cultures to one stage?
Well, you know, when you say diverse culture, I hope you don't mean that our culture is out of the mainstream. Our music is out of the mainstream, because the music has always been more representative of Trinidad and Tobago than I think any other music. Because in our music, we do everything from calypso back, lots of my original composition, but they all are composed according to West Indian norms and standards with the input of the sitar and ragas. So it is a complete mixture and fully representative of the Indian classical music on the Trinidad landscape. Mm-hmm. So to me, it finds a place naturally within the potpourri that is Trinidad and Tobago.
I like how you describe that, the potpourri that is Trinidad and Tobago. Mm-hmm. But you know, being able to create such palatable music and place it, as you just mentioned, fits naturally into the potpourri of Trinidad and Tobago. Precisely how difficult or easy was that? Because, I mean, we've had a conversation thus far where it wasn't widely accepted or even palatable. And following your studies, you came back to Trinidad and expanded. And describe to us your journey in particular and the challenges you would have faced in achieving what you have?
Well, a great many people would have been disappointed when I first came back as a sitar player. And the thing is, when I offered them the classical music, I mean, remember when I did my master's degree, I stood first in the world. I got the gold medal. It means that my standard of playing was not below any professional sitar player in India. I came back with that standard of music, but yet Trinidadians did not accept the classical music. So I started to simplify the music and make it simple. In fact, take a simple chutney song and make it into a piece of music, or take a calypso and recreate it to suit the sitar. And I mean, that's the work that had to be put into to make the sitar more amenable to the taste of Trinidad and Tobago. So that's it.
And Mr. Patterson, you celebrated, I think, your 75th birthday, was it last year? If I'm not mistaken.
77.
77th. And thanks for that correction. But you're not slowing down anytime sooner. You're continuing to light up stages around the Caribbean and the rest of the world.
Well, the thing is, it all depends on, I believe firmly that God is in charge of that. As soon as my fingers are nimble, I mean, as long as my fingers are nimble and I can sit cross-legged, I will play.
I think to me that is also a challenging part, because you mentioned having to pull the strings and the effect on your finger, but even having to sit upright like that in order to play the sitar for such a long period, I mean, it does wonders to your back, doesn't it?
Well, the thing about it, I sit down and practice for at least 4 to 6 hours daily, and that prepares me for the stage. So I can sit very comfortable. Just as you sit on a chair, I can sit on the floor with my legs crossed over in a Nancy kind of setting, in a web-like fashion. But the point is that has been how I sit from childhood, you know.
But I'm also, there's a hint that you may be releasing a new album at North Coast Jazz 2023?
No, I don't know where that news came from. We are preparing a new album, but we are not ready yet to release. So, but I'm releasing new songs, at least 3 new songs at North Coast Jazz.
Oh, excellent. So, as we are concluding, and thank you very much for joining me this morning, I look forward to seeing you at North Coast Jazz, because I will be there. Mangal Patterson Panther on the stage. What would be your pitch to the viewers out there, saying, listen, come and see me, come to North Coast Jazz 2023?
I think there are many people who did not yet have a chance to see us, strange enough, in Trinidad and Tobago. And I think this would be a golden opportunity for them to see what a son of the soil is able to produce in Trinidad and Tobago. Different 1, 2, standard, international standard of music. All the members of my band, whom we haven't spoken about, are all professional musicians and all worked very, very hard to produce their own music. The youngest addition to the band is a young fellow by the name of Jonathan Agostini. He is a rock musician who joined in the band and loves it very much. We have the pianist Harold Headley, who is a veteran and used to be head of music department at the University of the West Indies. We have Kareem Collingwood, who is an amazing bass guitarist. And we have a young fellow who plays drums, Jonathan Charles. So we have a nice cast of young people who just rejoined the band, because the band has a new face now compared to, say, pre-COVID.
Well, Mr. Patterson, actually, thank you very much as well for highlighting your band and members of your band, Panther, and also helping us to realize that you are creating new opportunities for others as well, and certainly a focus on the younger people. But as mentioned previously, I certainly look forward to your performance at North Coast Jazz 2023 and to meeting the rest of the band Panther. But thank you very much for joining me so early this morning, sir, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
We look forward to also. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, sir. Keep well.
Goodbye now.
Was Mangal Pasisa, the founder and lead of the band Panther, ladies and gentlemen. Privilege, as I said. One of the things that I'm absolutely grateful for and appreciative for is having the opportunity to actually interact and interview individuals whom, when just growing up, I heard of them all the time, I saw them all the time, and having a family speak about all these individuals. Now I'm in a position where I guess I have that one-on-one conversation with them. But as we continue this morning's edition of AM Prime, we go back into our regional updates, of which we started earlier, and we now go to the Republic of Guyana, where the Sheriff Group of Companies officially opened its multi-million-dollar general hospital at Lenora, West Coast Demerara, promising the speedy completion of 2 more similar facilities in Regions 4 and 6 in the coming months. Amid much pomp and ceremony, the family-run conglomerate has dedicated the facility to serve the people in the immediate and nearby communities from which they remember their humble beginnings. That service, President Dr. Irfan Muhammad Ali said, must be the highest standard in order to match the ongoing $25 billion transformation of the immediate environs, which will soon feature a new bank, housing development, mega mall, and apartment complex. Let's take a look at this report coming out of Guyana.
Mr. Sheriff started his journey, which is my father, as humble beginning. And it's emotional for me today here because, my dad and his family grew up poor, and to see this today and to have him here today, it's amazing, remarkable, and it's been a good journey. The Sheriff Group of Companies have always exhibit innovation, and the hospital will not fall short of this.
Is that this is not only the end of the hospital or the medical, we're also building one in Georgetown with the blessing of the president, the health minister, one in our piece. So we kind of more be comprehensive in the medical field across the country. And maybe the president will give us another task to find another region to build one.
Is invested in this region from the public and private sector. For those of us who want that figure to come closer to home, in ongoing projects from the public and private sector in this region, we collectively as a country, we are investing $200 billion Guyana dollars. $200 billion Guyana dollars.
Well, the development of Guyana and various regions across Guyana, well, that is going with full swing there. That hospital recently opened by the Sheriff Group of Companies. Moving forward now, we go across to Barbados. Well, some good news coming out of Barbados, actually. Tourism officials and stakeholders are reporting a good winter tourist season. Let's take a look at this report from Barbados.
BHTA Chief Executive Officer Ryan Ford said Barbados remains high on the agenda of most in the travel trade, and the winter season reflected that fact.
The winter season was fairly good for the bulk of our members. Barbados is a destination and very well known or well selected when it comes to a winter destination. We also have a lot of our members who can attractions, restaurants, and our hotels would have added new products in terms of what tourists and locals could enjoy. So that is welcoming over first real winter of the major lockdown for Hawaii. Obviously, we have some good substantial amount of work to continue to do in order to drive traffic.
Events manager at Radisson Aquatica Resort, Rodney Seeley, echoes similar sentiments and said it was a good mix of clientele. He added that while there is expected to be a dip in summer numbers, those too are looking good.
The summer season has got it right now. The projections are some high, some low. Particularly with us not hosting cricket this time around, which was very good for us last year. So we're going to have some lean periods, but there are periods that are still looking pretty good.
Managing Director of Crane Resorts, Paul Doyle, said he has no complaints over the just-ended winter season. He also revealed that they are already preparing a new set of initiatives for summer, which will be rolled out soon.
This is kind of a day-to-day business, but it was good. It was better than 2019 for us, so no complaints. The challenge we have on this coast is sargassum. I think we're going to lick it, but that there's kind of an additional challenge we have. Actually, a lot of people in the Caribbean, I suppose.
Official word from the BHTA on the winter tourist season is expected to be made public later this week. Trevor Thorpe, CBC News.
Well, that's some good news coming out of Barbados, where the hotels on the island don't have much to complain about. Less for the sargassum, which we all could complain about here, although there is opportunity to gain from sargassum as well. But as it relates to the winter tourist season in Barbados, it's good news with the numbers up better than 2019, which was the year before the COVID-19 pandemic had devastating impacts on the tourism industry around the world, but particularly here in the Caribbean, with many of the islands, of course, dependent on tourism. The next question is whether or not Tobago could be a player in this game, because yes, tourist arrivals to Tobago have actually declined, and there are those on the island who are feeling it. Many hotel owners will tell you they don't see the numbers as they did before. So exactly what does Tobago need to do? Because even though we're going to all these tourism conferences, in Germany for example, is it really bearing fruit? Well, only time will tell, because the summer is right around the corner, and not summer here in TNT. Remember, we just have a rainy season and a dry season. We're talking about summer for European countries where the majority of its clientele come from Scandinavian, from countries, Germany, from the United Kingdom, well, hopefully that bears fruit for Tobago. Possibly Tobago Carnival as well. Not hearing much about that. Don't know if we're still going for that model in October. And certainly the winter months to come following that. Well, I guess we'll see, but well done, Barbados. Very happy for you. Anyway, we have to break for WESN's news on the hour here on AM Prime. When we return, we'll welcome our final guest for this morning's edition of the program as we continue the conversations. Stay tuned.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. THA Chief Secretary stands by statements for central government to stay out of Tobago's business. Wife of murdered Tobago man puzzled by his murder. Beneficiaries receive deeds to residential lots from minister. Regionally, Antigua recruiting more medical professionals from Cuba. And internationally, missing Australian fisherman's body found in crocodile. Now for the details. THA Chief Secretary Farley Augustine is calling on central government to stay out of Tobago's affairs, Speaking on Tobago Update, Augustine said there are several issues that should get the attention of the Prime Minister and central government rather than getting in Tobago's business.
Ever so often, we have to remind the Prime Minister and the central government what their business is and get them in line. Because if you don't, you will have situations where the little bits of autonomy that we do have, we will not enjoy them, because those are the ones they will seek to mess with while ignoring what their business really is.
The Chief Secretary stands by its comments toward the Prime Minister and denies that he was disrespectful.
In my world, respect must be a two-way street. And if sometimes if you don't trade your lamb-like character for a lion, people will walk all over you. And what I see is a great deal of hypocrisy pervading the space.
The latest killing in Tobago has left her wife reeling from heartbreak. She lamented the moment her husband's life was snuffed out. 68-year-old Edward Eastman of Golden Lane, Tobago, was shot and killed on Wednesday by a man who called out to him. This is the 5th murder to be recorded in Tobago for the year thus far.
I don't know who really do this, but they killed my husband. I just don't know how to put it to put these pieces together. A blade tried to defend himself. So he said, "Who? By the door, please answer." So I say who you are, say who you are, and the person not. And the person started to fire a shot from that side of the louvers. And when I see the shot, when I look so, I really see somebody, a small prayer person with a black hoodie. And they start to shoot. He take up the fan and think to pelt the people, to see, well, whatever. That didn't stop them. They fire non-stop bullet on the man, and the man slum on me.
Housing Minister Camille Robinson-Regis presented deeds of lease to deserving beneficiaries under the government-aided self-help housing program. A total of 50 families received 30-year leases with an option to renew for residential lots in Chaguanas and Karapi-Chaima. Additionally, program beneficiaries have access to low interest rates 2% to 5% from the Trinidad and Tobago Mortgage Finance Company Limited, building plans from the LSA, as well as assistance and guidance to meet statutory building requirements. On to regional developments now. Antigua and Barbuda Health Minister Malwyn Joseph says that in an effort to boost the numbers at the Sir Lester Bird Medical Center, close to a dozen medical professionals will be sourced from Cuba. Joseph said that talks are ongoing with the Cuban government. His statement followed a disruption in healthcare services at the hospital last Tuesday and Wednesday. In international news now, the remains of an Australian man who vanished while fishing with friends have been found inside a crocodile. Kevin Darmody was last seen at Kennedy's Bend, a well-known saltwater crocodile habitat in a remote part of northern Queensland on Saturday. After a 2-day search of the area, police euthanized 2 large crocodiles and found human body parts. Police said it was a tragic ending for Mr. Darmody. A formal identification process will be carried out. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah, hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds Blashy Shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here, Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunus Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
Well, on April 17th, the Tobago People's Party was launched by Chief Secretary Farley Augustine and the executives of the Tobago House of Assembly. Now, following a social media post by the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, who suggested that the Tobago People's Party does not have the mandate of Tobagonians, well, the Chief Secretary responded by telling the Prime Minister to mind his business. Those were not his exact words, but I'd rather just leave it right there. And now this morning, to expand on this conversation and the repercussions or possible repercussions for both the response by the Chief Secretary, I'm joined by the retired head of the public service, Mr. Reginald Dumas. Good morning, sir.
Morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, sir?
Holding on. Sun shining, and things. I suppose the rainy season might be starting soon. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll find out whether or not we miss the sun when the rain starts to pour down heavy. But anyway...
It was falling last night, actually.
It did. I enjoyed it. But this morning, bright and sunny. Mr. Dumas, let's begin with the Prime Minister's social media post in response to the formation of the Tobago People's Party, suggesting that Farley Augustine, the Chief Secretary, and the rest of the executives do not have the mandate of Tobagonians because they were elected as part of the PDP. What are your thoughts on this? Is the Prime Minister right to suggest that they do not have the mandate of Tobagonians?
Well, of course, they were elected as PDP, and as you know, party split, and they have formed, or are forming, because I'm not sure whether it's official yet, they are forming a new party called the Tobago People's Party. There is nothing in the Tobago House of Assembly Act that I know of to suggest that they have to go back to the polls. There's nothing legal. You might say that it might be ethical, it might be moral, excuse me, but there is nothing legal to suggest that they have to go back to the polls. Mm-hmm. I think that is the position they're taking. Mm-hmm. We will see. I'm not sure that people in Tobago are making a big fuss about this. They're looking really to see how the new party is going to perform, how the current independents are performing or not performing, as the case may be, and how the new party will perform, and then they will make their judgment on that basis. You might say, as I just said, that from an ethical point of view, since they were not elected as Tobago People's Party, that they might wish to return to the polls, but I don't think they're going to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Prime Minister actually, given all his years of experience as a politician, was he just trying to ruffle the feathers of the Chief Secretary and succeeded in probably wanting to do so?
Well, he's a politician. How do you expect politicians to behave? They behave like politicians, whatever the titles they hold. And in any case, the PNM in Tobago had been making the same point. So it's a PNM position. It's simply that the Prime Minister, as I don't know whether you were speaking as Prime Minister or political leader, because these two roles, unfortunately, in this country, get confused all the time. That is the case from day one from Eric Williams. But he was speaking and saying, well, look, go back to the polls and taking the position that his party, because the minority bench in the Tobago House of Assembly has been saying exactly the same thing, go back to the polls. Mm-hmm. So there was nothing unusual or surprising, to me at any rate, in the Prime Minister saying so.
Mm-hmm. Well, furthermore, now let's take a look at the Chief Secretary's response. Mind your business. Again, not his exact words, but we leave it there. What do you make of the Chief Secretary's response?
I would not have myself responded in that way. Maybe because my background is, professional background is somewhat different. I'm not a politician, never been, although I think I know a great deal about politics, having seen it at work in various parts of the world, not only Trinidad and Tobago. And generally, politicians behave in the same way. I would not have made that remark. I would simply have said, if there was a video, as he said, he had a video saying that the Prime Minister said some time ago, look, I'm going to stay out of Tobago people business or whatever it is, because that was, again, a political matter. When there was some confusion, I believe, between Watson Duke and Fali Augustine, and he was going to stay out of that. And so Augustine plays his video, I replace it because he has a tape of it, and says, so mind your so-and-so business. I would not have reacted in that way. If I wanted to tell the Prime Minister to stay out of it, I would have said, look, here's this video. Prime Minister, keep your word, keep your promise, full stop. And but everyone would have understood what I meant. And there would be no need to ruffle feathers with using four-letter words, although this is not a major four-letter word, quite frankly. People use it all the time, even on the media, even on television, people use it. So I would not have done it that way, but that is the way I see things.
Well, let's just take a look at that. Would you have not used this in that way because of the language or the I mean, as you just said, the four-letter word is not that strong anyway. People use it even on television all the time. But is it simply because of the language, or is it more to do with the politics of Tobago?
It came over, the word, the phrase came over as impolite and disrespectful. You were talking about respect for elders, whether they're on a different political side or not. And let us face it, Dr. Rowley is old enough to be Mr. Augustine's father. Now, when you say something like that, what message are you sending to younger people? You say you want people to behave in a certain way, that the young must have respect for the elders, etc., and then do this. Suppose, which could happen. Let us say there is something in a classroom in a school in Tobago, and people gets up and tells the teacher, well, mind your damn business. And the teacher says, well, you can't speak to me like that. And then the pupil says, well, the Chief Secretary says so, so if the Chief Secretary could play, who's me? So, as I say, there could be repercussions.
But Mr. Dumas, I appreciate the point that you're bringing across. You're speaking from a moral and ethical high ground. Is that even applicable in politics?
Generally, no. But even in politics, you have sometimes to understand diplomacy, and you have to understand language. And there are times in politics when you simply either reply in a certain way or you simply do not reply, because you only aggravate matters. For instance, take this particular issue. Has Dr. Rowley actually replied to Mr. Augustine on what he said there? He has not. So you never know what Dr. Rowley might be, what he might be planning. This might go beyond the question of political party, or whether what the PNM has to say, or what it might do to or with the TPP, might go beyond that to the whole broader issue of the Tobago. And you might find a situation in which Tobago comes out the short end of the stick. So, as I'm saying, you have to be careful, even in politics. You have to be careful about what you say and what you do not say.
Are we seeing a different approach now from Farley Augustine. It seems as though he's approaching things differently from a different angle, not necessarily as subtle, or I like to even use the term as diplomatic as he was before. All of this has started happening since the resignation, well, not the resignations, the firings from the PDP. It seems to be a different approach. Are we seeing the real Farley Augustine, or is it just frustration?
I don't know. I know Mr. Augustine, but not at all well. I have met him a few times. I've always been impressed from the time I first met him when he was not in party politics, when he was a teacher at the Speyside School, which is when I was many, many years ago when I met him first, and I was immediately struck by the quality of his intelligence. I remember speaking to people about it at the time, and I said, I met this young man, and he's really very, very bright. But being very, very bright is not always enough. You have all to weigh situations, and don't just shoot your mouth off because you're feeling unhappy or happy about a particular situation. I don't know if he's yet practicing that. And what I am concerned about, in particular, they can fight their political battles. I mean, I don't belong to any party, and I'm not. Let them carry on. You expect politicians to fight. What I am concerned about is the welfare of Tobago. Mm-hmm. Does this have a negative impact on Tobago? Mm-hmm. That is.
Well, let's expand on that for a bit there. Does this have a negative impact on Tobago? How would this outburst between the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, who is a Tobagonian himself, and Chief Secretary Farley Augustine, how does this now affect the welfare of Tobago? Does it even affect the House of Assembly's push for autonomy, which we have not heard much about in recent times?
Precisely. That is one way. I don't know where this bill is. It must be languishing somewhere in some joint select committee or something, lying down there being tended or not tended by some constitutional midwife. I don't know. I don't know what has happened to it. I've heard about it in over a year, quite frankly, which suggests that it's been quietly not put to rest, but put aside. Now, here you have a situation in which this exchange of words, or at least not so much exchange, but what Farley has said, or minding your business, where this has occurred. And you can have a situation in which the government then says, well, okay, if that is the way you want to play it, leave that bill there. You say you want internal self-government, wait some more. Or you can have also a situation in which, remember, the monies that Tobago spends come essentially from Trinidad, from the national budget. Once it's been allocated to the national budget to Tobago, which is not all that much. But the fact is that because Tobago doesn't really produce any money of its own, any revenue of its own to write home about. There's no manufacturing industry here, et cetera, et cetera. And although the THA Act does say that revenue and, like, say, taxes on banks, et cetera, and their branches in Tobago should be paid into a Tobago fund. The truth is that does not happen in practice. So one here in Tobago is reliant on the central government for developmental funds. Suppose these developmental funds, yes, were paid, but there is a lag. And you're hearing, well, we don't have enough money now to send you. We are going to send you $50 million, but we can only send 25, and so on.
But Mr. Dumas, let me just interject. Do you think that it's rather interesting, it can take a very intriguing twist, that now that the Chief Secretary has told the Prime Minister to mind his business, that the Prime Minister will say, okay, you've just given me excuse, I'll take it quite literally. I'll stay out of the business of Tobago and we will hold back. on the development of Tobago. Is that a possibility?
It's a possibility. I'm not saying the Prime Minister will do it, but it is a possibility. You want me to mind my business? I will mind it. You mind yours, I will mind mine. And let's see what happens. Since you depend on me for funds, I will send the funds, of course, because they've been voted by Parliament, but I will send them in my time and at my pace. And if certain people are not being paid because the money isn't there, or because you can't do developmental work because the money isn't there, well, I'm minding my business. I'm still sending the money. I'm just not able to send it as rapidly as you would like.
Do you think that the autonomy bill, the Constitution Amendment to Tobago Self-Government Bill 2020, and the Tobago Island Administration Bill 2021, which are currently before Parliamentary Joint Select Committee, do you think that there has been a deliberate delay?
I would not be surprised if there has not been a deliberate delay, because the two sides are very far apart. You see, the government has taken the position. Let me step back a bit. Essentially, what you are having is a difference of perception and understanding. When people in Tobago say internal self-government, they mean autonomy. Tobago, not an independent state, but a state that will be responsible for certain items of development, whatever they happen to be. The government, however, takes the position that Trinidad and Tobago is a unitary state. Now, I want to make this clear because perhaps a lot of your listeners don't know this. There is no such definition in the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. We use this phrase unitary state very loosely and say Trinidad and Tobago is a unitary state, meaning, they're together and everything's run from Port of Spain, etc. But there is no definition of Trinidad and Tobago in the Constitution as a unitary state. The only definition of Trinidad and Tobago Constitution is that Trinidad and Tobago is a sovereign democratic state. But we have become accustomed to and we genuinely believe that legally Trinidad and Tobago is a unitary state. And there is nothing in the law, in the Constitution, which is the highest law of the land, to support that thesis. So we go on the basis, and again, if you read, you wouldn't have the time, but I mean, if you were to read some of the verbatim records of, say, the last meeting when a team from the central government was over here in Tobago and they talk, you will see Mrs. Camille Robinson Regis, who led the government, talking about the unitary state of Trinidad and Tobago. I said, well, what unitary state? There's no unitary state in Trinidad and Tobago, legally and constitutionally.
So then does this actually help Tobago's fight?
Politically, but not, it is not a constitutionally, constitutional phrase that you can find in our Constitution.
Mm-hmm. And this definition that is in the Constitution, the one where it says it's a sovereign democratic state, but there's no mention of it being a unitary state. It's become a political term. Does that strengthen the arguments then for Tobago's push for autonomy? Simply because the Constitution does not necessarily define Trinidad and Tobago as a unitary state.
We have the problem of who has the majority. It might be quite right to say that Trinidad and Tobago is not defined in the Constitution as a unitary state. But when the political majority is defining it politically and not constitutionally, and says that it is a unitary state, a problem arises, because it is the majority that will pass the legislation. Mm-hmm. And if the majority has dug its heels in, then there's a problem.
Mm-hmm. You see, Mr. Dumas, something that you've hit the nail on the head on this morning, and I'm glad that you've done it, it's a constant cry of mine. The lack of education within the public about such thing, even the crucial terminology as defined in the Constitution, is oftentimes that lack of knowledge or education is used against us in favor of politicians. So I'm actually very much appreciative that you've raised that. But, as we're running out of time, do you think that the Prime Minister, should he have even, in the first place, stated that he has nothing to do as Prime Minister with the business of Tobago or interfere with Tobago's business?
Well, the Prime Minister, he was of course making a political point, but you can't have a Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago who has nothing to do with Tobago, whether he comes from Tobago or not. So that he was talking politics there. I mean, it is politicians again. That's how they tend to behave. If he's not involved in the business of Tobago, in whose business is he involved? Trinidad? It makes no sense. So I'm saying he was making a political point and referring specifically to what had happened earlier about the political fallout within the then PDP, as it was then constituted. But of course, Tobago is part of his business. He's the Prime Minister of the country.
But I know you also mentioned we have to look at where the majority lies. So is it that the Prime Minister making such a statement, it's a political statement, but there are no repercussions for making that statement on a platform?
Politicians say all kinds of things on platforms. You just have to listen to what the Prime Minister said in Togo last weekend, talking to a gathering of his party, which I have criticized already. It ought not to have been said at all. But he said it. And this has been the case from day one. Eric Williams also used to speak as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, or as Premier, but this as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, would frequently go to party conventions to announce government policy. This melding of party and government has been afflicting us from day one. It is wrong as far as I'm concerned. I have complained over the decades without, of course, anything because I have no political power. So I can't, all I can do is complain and write and say something on WESN. But
Mr. Dumas, are you still with us? Oh, crikey. All right, we've lost Mr. Dumas there. All right, you're back with us, Mr. Dumas.
I'm sorry, my microphone, I have to bring in a technician because it tends to do its own thing.
No worries. Very quickly, final question. Must get this in, actually. Has public opinion in Tobago shifted drastically enough that it could reverse the fortunes of the People's National Movement Tobago Council should an early election, of which they are calling for, be called?
No, I don't think they've shifted so much. Yes, you have a lot of people who are unhappy with what has been happening, especially within this new party to be formed, the TPP or the PDP. Yes, you do have that. And you have a lot of people who have said to me, I work so hard for the PDP and look how they're behaving, etc., etc. But there is still a reservoir of goodwill for Mr. Augustine, and not so much for some of the other members of his team, I regret to say, but certainly for him. And you will still find, I think, if an election were held tomorrow, not that the PDP will win by that massive margin of 14-1. But I would not be surprised if the PDP was still to win. Though majority will have shrunk.
Tobago,
But they have
Tobago People's Party. Tobago People's Party.
Yes.
Mr. Dumas, thank you very much for joining me for this conversation this morning, sir. Taking the high moral and ethical ground, it's very much admirable. You've raised some very good points. And also, your sense of humor actually helps us to digest all of this. So, thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Keep well. That was
Thank
Mr.
you.
Reginald Dumas, the retired head of the public service. Very good conversation this morning, and we thank him once more. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this edition of AM Prime. Thank you very much for starting your day with me. It's always a privilege and an honor of mine. Listen, have a great day today. Okay, enjoy it, make it yours, and always, always take an example from this conversation. Always set high standards of yourself and for yourself. Be the mature individual, always be rational, and always, always do the right thing. People might say the right thing, well, that's open, that can mean anything. No, listen, never be selfish, always be respectful. Ladies and gentlemen, Trans-Tobago could be a bit sweeter if we make it happen. Anyway, I'll see you again tomorrow morning, bright and early at 6 o'clock. I'm Keaton Shaw. Have a great day. Bye-bye.